Hello everyone, welcome back to our Yellow Cow Chat session. We meet here every Friday to talk about different issues happening in the workplace, life, and everything in between. In today's episode, we are going to talk about how someone can bounce back from a job loss. And I will, of course, be your host. My name is Nancy, and with me, I have a very special guest. I have Miss Joanna. She is Senior Coordinator Talent here at Empower. And of course, we will be discussing how to bounce back, what techniques, what are the challenges someone, goes through when, after they've experienced a job loss. And feel free to drop your comments, your views. How did you go through a job loss? What techniques did you use to bounce back into the next phase or your next career? So, karibuni sana. So Joanna, we know that there are a couple of reasons as to why someone can lose a job. Someone can lose a job because a company shut down, retrenchment, performance reasons, and many more. Do you think that, in your opinion, of course, do you think that people are prepared? Do they have that mental awareness that there's a possibility at some point in their, career journey or in that job that they're in, that they could lose that job?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think it's both yes and no. So for those that may have been in the world of work for a much longer time, may have that realization, but perhaps for young professionals who've just started out, perhaps that's not a reality that they ruminate over and over or even think about sometimes. But the same can also apply to those who have been working for a long time. You've had this job security, you've had this job for an extended period of time. So in your mind, even the thought of losing this job is not a reality. So it's a yes and no question, depending on how people really understand that the world of work is volatile, it can be subject to change. We've seen that in the period of, early onset of COVID-19, where people were working from home, other people had to be retrenched. So it's a mixed awareness where some do and some don't. But I think given how the last year or so has gone, I think we're now more so developing this awareness that perhaps work will not be as consistent as you think it would be.
Do you think it's important for people to take this mental note and, just be prepared for the unknown and the uncertainty of just knowing that at some point, someday, I could wake up to a termination letter or,
I mean, if the right processes are followed, right, you won't just wake up to a termination letter. But it could be we are reducing the number of staff because the company is not making as much money as we thought. So I think in the same way we do apply for health insurance, knowing that we might get sick in the future. We may or we may not, but we do prepare for that. Or we have car insurance. We might or might not get into an accident. I think in the same way, it's important to note that I may or may not have this job. Not to have that stress you, but to have that drive you. Sometimes you can use it as a driving force in how you make decisions.
So, in line with that, do you think that, have you come across stereotypes towards a job loss? Someone that has lost a job, they're probably being looked at in a certain way, or even the companies themselves that have gone through a circumstance or a situation where they have to maybe let go of some people. They're looked at in a certain way. Can you maybe let's talk about these stereotypes and how maybe someone can overcome and how they actually impact this person that has been, that has gone through this job loss?
Yeah, the stereotypes are real. It's life. So when things happen, we like to make conclusions as to why something has happened, right? So some of the stereotypes people can place on someone that has gone through a job loss is perhaps you were not performing. Perhaps you were not the right culture fit. Perhaps there was somebody else that did the job better than you, so they knew that they could do without you. it's a lot. It's, perhaps you were not as committed to your role. Maybe you were if you were just a bit more focused, or if you were just a bit more ambitious, perhaps you would still have the job that you've lost. So those stereotypes are there. And oftentimes when people go through periods or seasons of job loss, it's very easy for them to want to withdraw and stay in isolation in order to avoid these stereotypes that surround that conversation on why they don't have a job. Maybe if you worked hard enough, maybe if you were connected to the right people, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. So they're there. So a lot of times the job loss, people have to work through the mental battle of having not to view themselves in a perspective that perhaps is not the right perspective on why they've lost a job. There's some people that have lost a job because they've gone through a sickness, or they've had to take care of a family member. Job loss does not always equal performance. It is not always equal to how great of a person you were, but those stereotypes are there. So a lot of people have to go through the mental fortification or the mental battle of not seeing themselves as less than when they do go through that.
As someone who has worked, who is working with candidates, and you speak to a lot of these candidates that probably come from a background where they lost a job due to certain reasons. To what extent have you seen this affect them psychologically and the way they perceive themselves into the next career, or the way they speak about themselves? To what extent, and how do you speak to them? How do you help them to get out of that mental frame and help them move into the next phase?
It's just really, when we do talk to these individuals and these candidates, it's helping them reframe their perspective, not only of themselves but of the world of work, also of their previous employers, or of the communities that they're in. So it's having a real honest conversation of, all right, you've gone through a job loss. Tell me why you've gone through that job loss. And then when you hear them speak openly about why, then we go the next step and say, that is a fair point, or that is a fair reason, but let us help you tell your story further than just, I lost this job, they retrenched me because of COVID-19. There is something that you can do in the in-between in order to strengthen your story and not just have it clouded by, job loss. That's who you are, that's what you are. But let's push further than that and say, yes, this has happened, but this doesn't define me. So it's a lot of, let's talk openly and honestly as to why you went through that job loss, because I think sometimes, yes, we do understand that there are extraneous reasons that are out of our reach as to why we lose jobs. But sometimes we can lose jobs because of the things that we do and do not do.
Correct.
So how do we have that conversation honestly, and how do I help you tell and frame your story in a way that is honest, but in a way that just doesn't define you from the perspective of a job loss.
So for someone that lost a job because of, let's say, the things they did or things they did not do, probably, I would say, performance reasons, how do you help them capture that, internalize it, so that it does not carry, they do not carry that same trait or those same incapabilities or things that they didn't do right into the next job? How do you help them to, because it could be as much as them saying, I was retrenched because my manager didn't think I was doing the job right. But then I think it's up to you to now look at it from an external, or from an objective perspective and say, actually, I think maybe you did the wrong thing and this is how you get out of it. So how do you handle and how do you communicate this to someone who actually lost a job because of certain reasons that are obvious and they're, were driven by their own working environment, or their own working style, I would say?
Yeah, objectivity is hard. Honestly, objectivity is really hard because it's a sensitive conversation, right? Oftentimes what we do is directly correlated, or it feels that it's as though it's directly correlated to our worth or to our value. So when you're talking to someone about why they've lost a job, it's for those reasons that someone needs to take responsibility and be objective, it can be hard. So in our screening process, we do ask people, tell me about, an accomplishment that you've had in your role. And if someone is unable to tell that story clearly and succinctly, and then now they have been in this process of retrenchment, it's then saying, really asking, do you feel like, you did your best in this role? Why yes? Why no? What areas of improvement did you note once that retrenchment letter was brought to you, or you've gone through a performance evaluation and then they let you go? How do you frame that and understand that in a way where those areas of weaknesses can be areas of growth, and push you into developing them into areas of strengths?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you've put it very, very well. That I think it's about being aware and accepting that there was maybe at some point a misstep in the way you delivered your job, and carrying that forward in a positive way to help you grow into, do your next job even better.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's well noted. Now, let's now talk of the practical steps. Someone has probably lost a job out there, and they are struggling mentally. Of course, they're trying to make that positive move. But what tips can you give? What advice can you give now to a person that's watching this right now and that's struggling and trying to untrap themselves into that mental space?
Yeah. So I have 4 tips. I have not, honestly, from my experience, gone through the rainbow of why someone would experience a job loss. I've seen some colors of that job loss rainbow. So again, I want you all to know that we're approaching this from a very empathetic perspective, because life is complicated. So my advice for someone who really wants to strengthen themselves in a season of job loss, one is get connected. Sometimes isolation feels safe. It feels like a place where you can avoid questions. It feels like
a place where you're not judged.
Exactly. Or you are avoiding the sense of, if I go out to that gathering and they ask me the next question, I don't want to talk about that. I do not want to feel exposed in that type of way. So it's often very easy to say, I will be by myself and stay on my own so that I do not have to face that. But there is power in healthy and safe communities. So when you are connected to, schoolmates or friends and family or previous work colleagues, that could be your connection to the next job. There are a lot of jobs that you don't hear about. And a lot of jobs are gained through someone else referring you to that. So if you are isolated, how do you hear about that information? It will just be you, a computer, endless amounts of applications, a lot of rejections, no feedback at all, so you cannot move. So get connected. Find those communities, network, find those networking opportunities, whether it's online or in person. Push yourself, and you never know where your next job might be. A family referral, if you go to church, or you go to the mosque, or you go to the temple, that could be where you hear about your next opportunity. So the other thing is stay engaged. Just because you're not clocking in from 8 to 5 doesn't mean that the internet does not own multiple of reasons from which you can stay engaged. What are you learning? What are you feeding your mind? It's very easy to, and I confess that sometimes I did that. You're just on your phone scrolling all day long, when there are avenues through which you can do online courses, you can read a book, you can add your knowledge in this perspective, you can join a webinar where they're talking about these opportunities. So are you engaged, and are you preparing yourself for that next step, right? Because if I'm on my phone and I'm not staying engaged, if the next opportunity comes, it's very easy for me to miss it.
Yeah, I would also add, like, I think maintain a positive engagement, or the right kind of engagement, one that would actually help you, open up channels that would lead you into your next career.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that.
Because you could be staying engaged on your Instagram or social. Of course, you're still connecting with people, but then that might help. Yeah, might not help you. It might take longer for you to move into your next career because you're not in the right track.
Yeah. What conversations are you having? Who are you having conversations with? That is part of that positive and healthy engagement.
True.
There is also practicing telling your story. In simpler words, your elevator pitch. Do you know it? I think sometimes when you go through that job loss, you don't think about yourself as, oh no, I can add value in this and that way. So the knowledge of telling your story diminishes just because you're not directly related to a job. So if you go to the next webinar and they ask you to introduce yourself and you don't have a job, how do you do that?
How do you do that? True.
Are you practicing telling your story even in the midst of a season that feels like you have no story to tell?
Correct.
You always have a story, whether or not that story is directly linked to an employer. So how are you telling it? So that's your elevator pitch, right?
Yes.
And then the last thing is always be prepared. You can meet someone and they can say, oh, can you send me your CV? You have to go back home, scramble, on your CV from scratch. But if that's something that you have prepared, you have it saved on like a Google Drive or on your phone or on your WhatsApp, someone has it, you send it immediately. And, that can be what has you opening that door. So be prepared. Is your CV ready? Like I mentioned before, is your elevator pitch ready? So that when the opportunity comes, you're not saying, oh no, opportunity, wait for me. Let me go get ready. And then I'll come back, and then show you that, oh, okay, here you go, I'm ready.
I think it's about being proactive, because if you've lost a job and you definitely, of course, it will depend with the readiness that you have and the willpower that you have to, like, how fast do I want to move into the next career? Some people after a loss, they're just like, you know what, probably they've given up, or let me just take a break. So that also determines the rate at which you'll move into the next phase, or you'll move into your next career. So if you want to have that next job, you need to practice all these things, or look for ways different ways, other ways. There are materials you could read online on how you can, get out of that bubble of, I lost a job, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, into I can do this, I need to tell my story better. There are, positive engagement that I need to make. I need to be connected with people for me to move faster. So proactiveness is everything in this. And to just be positive, regardless whether it was an unfair, probably job loss, or you lost the job because you probably didn't do the job right in the first place. But there is always a window where you can improve.
And the positivity is hard. You hear real stories. Garnering that positivity is hard. But again, we're going back to the network of communities. When you are engaged with the right people, people pour into you in the right way, and you are much more able to, withstand and go through the mental battles that you often fight alone in isolation. So it's a combination of all of these things, but it's very key. Feed yourself the right thing, stay engaged through the right channels, and always be prepared. You never know when the next opportunity might come.
True. And I would also just add, as we wind up, is that just embrace it, own your story. You lost a job for certain reasons. I think one of the best ways for you to be able to hold yourself and tell that positive story is if you've embraced that moment, or that I would say thought that I went through this, it's happened to me, but I want to move out of it. So, but if you're in denial or you're trapped in that negative cloud, it's going to be really hard for you to go through this moment.
One of the things that was really helpful for me when I went through a similar time is I was always reminded that this is a season. And when you frame it from the perspective of this is a season, it will stop feeling like it's forever, right? About 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were going through the sunshiny season. Now we're going through the rainy season. But the rainy season will not last until December. It will change.
It will.
So when you are able to, half the battle is in the mind. So when you're able to frame it from that perspective, prepare yourself for the next opportunity. There is a way that things work out to those who are searching for something to work out. And on top of that, at Empower we do have resources. We have the CV builder, we have the articles that we're always posting in order to remain engaged with you. We have the webinars. We have really
even this platform is one way to stay engaged in a positive way.
We have really insightful people, where they're engaging with us on different levels and sharing their stories from different perspectives. Those are people you could be able to reach out to. So we are here as a resource because we do understand that can be a trip. But just know that we're here to support you and help you. We do have those resources that you can tap into.
Just to add, Joanna has written an article. It's called Mind the Gap. Please visit our platform, The Movement, and you'll be able to read in more details her story, her experience, and her way of dealing with the gap where you probably went through a job loss or you were searching for an opportunity. What do you do during that period? So I think this was a great discussion, Joanna. Thank you so much. I hope we were able to somehow uplift someone who's watching this and is currently going through a situation like this. So, share your thoughts, share your comments. It was great having you. I encourage you to keep visiting Empower, our website. We have plenty of resources, as Joanna mentioned, that can help you move into your next career journey. And do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on our social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, stay connected. Until next time, it was great. It was a great session. Thank you so much.
Guys.
Until next time, bye-bye.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.